Hello and welcome to the Swansea City. That was a good start, wasn't it? That's the standard. Those are the standards that listeners can look forward to in this podcast.
Dan, leave it all in.
Yeah. And again, 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to the Jackcast, the Swansea City podcast. I am Guto and with me, as always, we have Steve Carroll and Matt Barocco. Evening, boys.
Evening.
We've got 4 Swansea City matches to look back at tonight. Aren't you lucky? Don't worry, just in case that sounds too depressing for you, we will also have some non-Swans chat when we discuss the big news story of this week, which is the European Super League. But before we get to that, unfortunately, we do have to look back at recent Swansea matches. In fairness, they've been a real mixed bag, so there's going to be a bit of up and down in this section. For those of you who missed the last podcast, first of all, I don't blame you. It wasn't an enjoyable listen. That came on the back of 4 consecutive defeats without scoring. The positive, boys, is that the last 4 matches have definitely been an improvement on the 4 that went before them. And the first 2 which followed those games were particularly good. We'll start off with Millwall, which bizarrely was our best win of the season in the league, Matt. 3-0 away at the Den, totally out of the blue, and suddenly the mood just changed, didn't it?
It was really weird because we were talking in the last podcast, I think with good reason, and to quote you, Gito, it looks like there was nothing in the tank left. And it's an absolute valid assessment. We looked absolutely dead in our feet. We looked out of ideas. 4 defeats on the bounce. Without a shot on target since January last year. It felt like it was just endless monotony of watching us fall apart, really. The season looked like it was going to collapse on us. And we all predicted a miserable afternoon at the Den. And so, like Swans do, they produced one of the stellar performances of the season, full of the energy that we'd been missing for yonks. Conviction, team spirit, the work ethic was back there. And you're just sitting there, you're scratching your head because you're thinking, well, I'm delighted to be watching it, but what's going on? Do we need to drug test these players? Because something's completely different today than it was 3 days prior. So the performance was there, the attitude was there, like I say, the run-in, it just looked like it was an August fixture again for us, where we were just full of energy and hope, and it was born out of perhaps the social media and whatnot. It was gaining a bit of momentum. We were discussing it at length last podcast, and you could see Andre Ayew's celebration when he runs over to Steve Cooper and hugs him. That there's obviously been some conversations about that sort of pressure, and no doubt the sort of pressure that Cooper found himself under, and maybe the players, had a group together, and we need to put in a performance here for the gaffer, and they did that, and it was great. It was great to watch. It was completely unexpected, but it was a thumping, and it was one of the few games in the season where we dished out a real lesson to an opposition team.
Yeah, I'd see. I mean, there's an all-round performance. We looked, solid at the back again. The midfield was really hard-working, but the most eye-catching thing, of course, after 4 games without the goal, was that we scored 3 goals. Our strikers were back scoring again, and they were 3 goals of serious quality as well. I mean, which one do you think was the best in your opinion?
It's a tough one. I mean, as you say, they were all good strikes, weren't they, in that game? I'd probably go with the first one, if I'm honest. I think AU's strike was the best one. It was a great finish from outside the box. And I think with it being the first one, it was obviously the big one as well. I mean, if I'm honest, I didn't think we played that well in the first half. but it was almost as if we got that goal and the pressure seemed to lift and we seemed to play a lot better after that. And then the second half was a good performance then. So, like I said, I think that it was a big moment for us, and we got that win, and things were looking up really at that point. We were thinking we're coming out of this little dip, and we did play some nice stuff, probably the nicest football we played for a considerable period of time really. I mean, Jamal Lowe badly needed that goal as well, didn't he? I mean, he wasn't playing very well in the first half, but he took the first one really well, and then once he's got that, the first one, obviously quite often with strikers, then you get the second one doesn't take too long to follow. So, I mean, it was very encouraging really after what had been a poor run, that we had a convincing win, and we did play a lot better as well, didn't we?
It's mad, isn't it, Matt? The difference that a goal can make to a player's confidence. Because Jamal Lowe, prior to that, he looked like a lost soul. Really, he was just drifting around the pitch. He wasn't getting into dangerous areas. Didn't really have that energy. Didn't have that spark that we know he can possess. And then suddenly, he scores a very good goal against Millwall. And suddenly he's just popping up everywhere, and he's running at players, and he's got this little bit of confidence and swagger back in his game. He gets another one, which was really well taken against Millwall. And then, of course, against Wednesday, he opens the scoring again. I mean, every striker, I guess, is a confidence player, but in Jamal Lowe's case, it's particularly the case, isn't it?
He's they do say strikers are confidence players, and he seems to be an extreme example of it, because he kind of cows ass with a banjo when he's off form, and he just looks useless. Sorry to put it so bluntly, but he looks useless on the pitch, like almost to the point where you're just getting in the way. We'd be better off with 10, and that's been the way he's looked for a long time. And then he gets the goal against Millwall, where he's run across the defence, dummied the shot, and then smashed a lovely goal in. The second goal in that game was a piece of beauty, when he's dragged it back under his foot and smashed it into the roof of the net. I think we all just went, wow, because that wasn't just a striker's finish. That was someone brimming with confidence. It was just so cool inside the area, take it under his control and just give the keeper no chance. And it was a similar sort of finish, albeit superbly worked by Andre Ayew against Sheffield Wednesday, where he robs the ball and just running at the defence, then 2-on-1, and when he squares it to Lowe, you're thinking, right, because you do see this, you don't have to watch Timo Werner in the Premier League this season to see that it happens. You see strikers almost too easy a chance, and they squander it. But he's given the keeper no chance. He's hit the roof of the net, and we've seen quite a few goals the last couple of weeks from Jamal Lowe that do seem to hit the top part of the net, because he's really smashing them up there. The keeper's got no chance. And again, it looked the finish of a seasoned striker. So, strikers are confidence players. They go through purple patches and barren spells. Everyone does it, but not sure I know of other strikers that go through it to quite an extreme as Jamal Lowe, where he can literally be a world beater and a donkey a week apart from each other.
And I mean, Steve, 2-0 away at Sheffield Wednesday. It wasn't as flamboyant, perhaps, as the match against Millwall, but there was a real commanding nature, I thought, that performance, and particularly in the second half, where we controlled the game very well, just bossed it, really. And suddenly you're thinking, okay, these are the traits that we'd seen from Swansea earlier in the season when we were doing so well. We were disciplined at the back, not giving anything away. The midfield was working hard and winning all the battles, and then Ayew and Lowe were doing the business at the other end of the pitch. I mean, there was. Do you think we got a bit carried away, perhaps, thinking, oh, possibly this could be, the return of what we saw earlier on in the season, or were you kind of keeping your feet on the ground?
I think I was keeping my feet on the ground, really, purely because, I was seeing talk of us still pushing them for the top two, and I think from my point of view, I was thinking we probably would have needed 7 wins to get in there, really. And in our time supporting the Swans, I know the club record is 9 wins from the year we won the league under John Hollins, but I was trying to think back, and I can't really think of many occasions where we'd won 7 in a row. So if I'm honest, I certainly wasn't thinking that we were going to be pushing really for the top 2, although if we did get 7 wins in a row, that may have put us in there. So I think from my point of view, it was more the encouragement that we did seem to, obviously there'd been the improvement in it. I mean, the 2-0 there sort of reminded me of some of the away wins we'd had earlier in the season. I mean, a bit like QPR, you could say maybe we started okay and then scored from our first chance and then added a second in the second half, and it was quite comfortable. So I think that was more the encouraging thing of as I say, I wasn't really thinking top 2 because it seemed like the damage had already been done, and then obviously as we'll come on to discuss, the fatal blows were about to follow.
Yeah, Steve, there you said, I mean, we needed to win all our remaining games basically to have a hope, and that obviously didn't happen, Matt. And I mean, to draw 2-2 at home against the bottom team in the league is never a good result by anybody's standards. But the truth is, Matt, it could have been much worse, couldn't it?
Yeah, and it should have been. I think Wycombe were the better team, and I would be gutted if I was a Wycombe fan to see those points go away, because they were more threatening. They could have scored. They missed a couple of glorious opportunities, and we're their own worst enemy to letting us back into the game as well. So there was very little happening for us. So to get a penalty as we did in such fortuitous circumstances really give us a way back in. But
I mean, you said fortuitous. It was a definite penalty, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, so it wasn't controversial. I mean, it was definitely a penalty, but fortuitous in the sense that we weren't, it wasn't as if someone chopped us down on the way through to goal. It was a pass into the area. The guy slipped. It's run under his hand. It's a definite penalty, but there's no way, there's no moment from us to really carve them open or force a defender to chop us down in the box and stuff. No, it was a complete fluke. It was a penalty, but it wasn't. Like I say, it was fortuitous for us because it just meant that from nothing, we suddenly get a free shot at goal from 12 yards. Which again, like I say, Jamal Lowe smashes into the top of the net and suddenly looking like a man, who can only hit the top of the net. Which is great news. But of all the game, the disappointment and the fact that the Watford lost, and Steve talks about having to win the 7 games. Well, our big opportunity was that day against Wycombe, because when Watford were losing, then it was an opportunity for us to really, chip into that and knock 3 points off them, and then with us having to play them at the end of the season, it really, that becomes a 6-pointer in itself, and you look at the possibilities then of us actually pipping them if we can put a run together. But that, I think it died, of course. It's died multiple times, but it died finally against Wycombe, I think, because it was that was the opportunity to really claw them back into some sort of race, and we scraped the point, which again, I say, we could have lost it again at the death, but I'm chuffed for Liam Cullen, who's come back from his injury, expected to lose him for the season, but he comes on and he makes the difference. And maybe when we're looking at discussions we had earlier in the season about maybe not needing a striker, and maybe, this, that, and the other, it sometimes pays to have someone who thinks like a striker, and his movement in the run up to that goal was exactly what we've been missing. Just to get away from his man, steal half a yard in front of him, and turn the ball into the back of the net, and suddenly from 2-0 down we're level, and I was hoping we would kick on, but in the 7 minutes or so injury time we had, we didn't force a chance or a save of the goalkeeper, which really does sum up my feelings on the game, that we were lucky to get what we did.
Yeah, I mean, Steve, let's look at the one big positive from the game, which was Cullen scoring on his return 3 months out, and first thing he does when he gets back is heads the ball into the back of the net. brilliant for him personally, but like Matt said, basically he's got this striker's instinct, Cullen, and we've seen him now in his last game before his injury against Nottingham Forest, and now against Wycombe, games in which he gets into the right positions to get on the end of those balls and put the ball in the back of the net. I mean, looking forward to the future, is he somebody that we should be looking to now and thinking you can be our number one for a couple of years to come?
Well, hopefully. I mean, he definitely needs more minutes, but I would say that let's give an example that we're going to play 4-3-3 next season. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but let's say that we are. Then I would say he would be one of our two strikers, as far as I'm concerned. Obviously, he'd either be on the bench or he'd start. I think that's the way that you have to look at it. Now, we're not a club that's got a great deal of money. Cullen has done well in limited chances. As you say, he takes up those, the proper striker's position. That's how he ended up scoring that goal the other day. I'm not convinced anybody else here would have taken up the position that he did. He got himself in there looking to score a goal. You can't really buy that type of instinct, and it's something that we've sorely missed, I would say, this season. So, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, he should definitely have more opportunities. I think going forward now, if he's fit, we've only got one game per week the rest of the season. Get him in the team, because we haven't been doing especially well going forward. Let's actually play with a proper centre forward.
Matt, how highly do you rate Cullen, and how far can he go, do you think?
Under good management, we're not, if I'm thinking back to like Ollie McBurney, and we first tried to give him a chance. I think Leon and his caretaker game gave him a chance against Liverpool away in the Premier League, didn't he? When we got thumped that Boxing Day, and when you're at that level, it can be really punishing for youngsters without the experience to come in, and then you think, right, okay, no, you have to go on loan to a lower league team and you need to get the minutes under your belt. Now, I'm looking, when I see Cullen on the pitch, he's not below the level or the standard of this team or of this league. He's at that level. He's scoring goals. He's scored goals in the cup. He's scored goals in the league. And he doesn't look out of place on that football pitch. So there's no reason to have to send him away. It's not as if we're banging in 2, 3, 4 goals every game. It's been a big problem of ours this season. So yeah, I agree with Steve. He needs to feature more. He needs to be on the pitch. I've seen a few tweets today that disappointed that he didn't start, and I've got to be honest. Apart from the fact that you're bedding him back in after, I think it was an ankle injury, wasn't it, that kept him out for 3 months, and I can understand why you wouldn't just give him 90 off the bat. But yeah, if he's fit and he's ready to go and he feels fine, then he needs to play more minutes now, and get on the pitch, because potentially he goes from here, he gets a full season, playing most games for us next season, and if we're creating, then he can score, and there's no limit really to a striker who's got that instinct to hit the back of the net, and he's still young. He could be a great striker at this level potentially.
Yeah. Well, that was obviously a disappointing result against Wycombe, albeit a very dramatic game. No doubt about that, and a good comeback at least, even though the Swans definitely gave themselves a mountain to climb by conceding 2 goals straight after half time. And we were recording this one directly after the last minute loss to QPR at home. In some ways, Steve, a sense of deja vu about this, because it's quite similar to last minute defeats that we had in that four match losing streak against Birmingham and then against Preston. The goal coming in the 89th minute. Can we really have any kind of complaints about the result?
I don't think that we can, to be honest with you. I mean, I thought especially in the second half we were absolutely terrible. I mean, we were so cautious and negative, and you're looking at it thinking, okay, the top 2 is probably gone, because we knew that Watford had already beaten Norwich. But at the same time, I mean, you've got to go for it. You've got to show some, you've got to be on the front foot at home. And I felt that QPR were going for it more than we did, and they've got nothing to play for. It's just ridiculous. I mean, I was sent the stats just now from. Let's have a look at what we've got here. I mean, they were really damning for us. 41% possession, okay, we had 11 shots. They had 21. Only 2 shots on target. They had 7. Like, it's really poor. Like, I honestly don't think we can have any complaints over that result. It may feel slightly cruel because, again, we've been done in the last minute, but we were crap again. Like, it's the type of performance where you wonder what the hell we're doing in the position we are in the league. I mean, it just feels like another step backwards, and it's really frustrating as far as I'm concerned. I mean, as things stand right now, I mean, I can only see us going up through the playoffs if we get 2-0-0s, win on pens, and then get a 0-0 and win on pens in the final. I mean, I don't see another way that we're going to win. It's just baffling. I don't know what we were trying to do.
The one thing I'd say about that, Steve, is the way we've played tonight, the way we played against Wycombe as well. We don't look like keeping clean sheets, though. We were quite open at the back, actually, and QPR did create quite a few chances. We did too in the first half. It has to be said. The first half saw both sides create plenty of open obvious chances, and ridiculous, really, that the first half ended 0-0. But QPR throughout the match, I guess, created decent chances, went very close, hit the post, forced Woodman into saves, and then obviously in the final minute they score the goal. And I just feel like in the second half of the season there have been so many games where we have been very open and have been riding our luck for long periods, and whereas in the first half of the season those games just simply didn't happen. If anything, they've been the norm in the second half of the season.
Yeah, like you say, that it really has been the norm, I suppose, isn't it? I mean, we've defensively, we just haven't been at the races for the last however many games. I mean, look at that Huddersfield game where, obviously we conceded 4 at the time. I think we were thinking, oh, maybe this is just a bit of an anomaly. But I haven't got the stats to hand in front of me, but I bet, including that game and since, we've conceded more goals than in every other game, prior to that. It's just been a shambles, really. We've, our success this season has been built off defence, isn't it? I mean, we've never been great going forward, but we've been able to, nick the odd goal, and obviously we've been very good at seeing that out in general. But that's gone now, and it does sort of show to you why, our lack of goal scoring and creating chances was a problem, because it only took a little dip in terms of our defensive solidity to cause problems. I mean, I think it's 7 points now from the last 8 games, 5 of them defeats. In all 5 of them, we haven't scored. It's not good enough, is it?
No, it isn't. And Matt, another factor which has made our defence much, much stronger this season is the way our midfield has played. But that's really come under a bit of scrutiny in the last 2 games. And I don't know about you, but there are different opinions on this on social media. Some people are saying that the players are playing too deep. The midfield is too deep, too spaced out, not really a clearly defined shape. The fact that we don't really have a designated kind of number 10. I'll be honest. I think, if anything, we're not deep enough, because tonight in particular, what we saw was often the defence picking up the ball and then looking up and nobody anywhere near them, really. And whereas, and I don't want to compare this midfield to Leon Britton, who's one of the best midfielders we've ever had. But what was so brilliant about Leon's game was that he was always available for a pass. He was always in the right position to offer himself for a pass. Grimes does that reasonably well. Didn't think he was great at it tonight, but on the whole, he does it pretty well. But it's always as if there's maybe one midfielder offering himself, but the other 2 then have shot up the other end of the pitch, and they're nowhere to see, or they're drifting over to the wing, and they're not making themselves available for these passes. And what that results in every single game almost these days is the midfield getting outnumbered, and it makes it so much easier for the opposition to play. It's something that we do worse probably than almost any other team in the division. Offer ourselves for the defence so that we can actually play out from the back, and it makes it so. I don't know about you, Matt, but I just think it makes every single attack that we try to build look very desperate and very strained from the off, because it's not easy to build an attack gradually from the back.
Well, it's ironic because we were something we were known for. Yeah, we were known for bringing out from the back and coming in from the defence and being comfortable on the ball, 1 to 11. It was just something that we become accustomed to, and maybe we've got high standards, and that's why we're looking at it so disappointingly now. But how can you build attacks? How can you build attacks when your only option for your centre back or your full back is, well, I'm going to have to go long because we're not blessed with height or aerial presence or any threat in the final third. We don't possess a Peter Crouch type player. So in that respect, all we're doing is, and this is where Steve's stats come into play, we're giving the ball away. A lot of the time those balls go up and they get headed away by defenders straight away. And when the second ball drops, then, like you say, the midfield aren't in position. And I know some people, I do feel bad because I know after the Millwall and Sheffield Wednesday game, we got a couple of tweets off a few listeners saying, looking forward to the new pod. We'll have an upbeat one for a change. And we haven't actually got around to doing one until tonight.
Sorry.
So I feel like it looks like it's an agenda against, we'll only do a podcast when we're fuming. No, it's not that at all. It's just the way it's gone, unfortunately. But we were in that last podcast that we would remember us talking about working on shape, working on positions, and not just putting players out there thinking, well, you're a defensive midfielder, you're a centre midfielder, and you're a bit of a attacking midfielder. You three go out there and complement each other. It's not enough. It's not enough if you're losing in the 80th minute just to bring a striker on. It's not enough. You need to work this out before the ball is kicked. You need to have gone through scenarios. We see in training games where they're playing 10 against 11 and whatnot, and playing sorts of games in both sides where you go, well, you got a man up, this is how we play. We got a man down, this is how we play. Also, if we're losing the 80th minute and I bring on a striker, this is what I want us to do. If we are, playing a certain way or we're trying to bring the ball out of the back, then this is what I want to do. And just putting the players on the pitch without that sort of what looks like no prior thought into how we're going to play that way. It just looks like it looked tonight, which is no options. Because in fairness, I do think those defenders, when they get the ball, I do look and I see they're looking for that ball. They're looking for someone to give it to. And if that's not coming, where's that falling down? Is that the players not doing what happened on the training ground? Is it not happening on the training ground? Because something's fallen down there between the application on the pitch and what's going on behind the scenes. It's just not. You need to have, if you want your defenders to bring it out and start playing from the back, then they need to have options. And when they don't, it goes long, we lose the ball, the possession stats look poor, and we're facing under the cosh. And the defence playing the way they are at the moment, it doesn't look good because we're just facing a barrage against the team
Steve,
who have got nothing to play for.
Sorry, man. On that point, Steve. I mean, is it the players not following instructions, etc.? Is it Cooper's tactics? I mean, for me, looking at the way our midfield functioned tonight against QPR, that to me looked like just something tactically that's not going right, because it's not a midfielder's natural instinct, surely, to kind of sprint up the pitch as soon as we win the ball back. Surely a player like Fulton, who started off life as a holding midfielder, surely his first instinct is to offer himself for a pass. It's not to kind of run up the pitch and abandon his defence. So it must be something tactical, but I just don't think it works. And I just think it leaves our midfield so stretched and imbalanced and shapeless that it makes life difficult for us.
I honestly don't know what we're trying to do at times, is the honest answer. I mean, I think I don't like a midfield three of Smith, Fulton and Grimes, if I'm honest with you, because I think there's not much variation there, and there's no creativity, Hardy. That's what alarms me. You just don't see us really offering to do anything. I think tactically, we've been found wanting quite a lot this season, if I'm honest, and we just got away with being able to shit our way to a lot of results by keeping things tight, really. But I think now we're being found out. A lot of players are not really, offering a great deal. I think in midfield does seem to be a key area because, I mean, especially look in the second half, I mean, we barely did anything, did we? So we've definitely got to try and do something. I mean, I think as much as Hoolahan, for example, maybe hasn't been as influential as we would have liked, and is more someone who has his moments, he really needs to play, because if we're going to win games, I think it's something we might have to sacrifice, even if he isn't always as influential as we'd like. He might pop up with the moment that we need. So I've never been a fan of that midfield three, and I'm not going to change my tune on it now, even though it did work previously. I just think it's too limited.
Yeah, it's an interesting debate on the Swans midfield, because it is an area that's struggled for so long, and well, it not so much struggle, but it's just an area that we've struggled to find that perfect balance. Really, try different things. Things have worked in the short term, but nothing really lasting so far. We'll move on to discuss kind of Swansea's upcoming fixtures. The automatic spots are now pretty much dead and buried. Mathematically, it would take the ultimate miracle for the Swans to finish second at this rate. So congratulations to Norwich and Watford on their promotions, and Swansea's focus swiftly turns now to the playoffs and trying to enter those playoffs in the best form possible. Our form on the pitch has been up and down over the last few games, but off the pitch, the club took a very admirable stance since our last podcast. Steve, you joined them in that stance in boycotting social media after yet more racial abuse aimed at our players. It's absolutely mad for me how many stories how many times we've discussed this season, how many incidents we've unfortunately had to discuss where one of our players has had to put up with this nonsense, and the club, fair play to them, decided enough was enough. They didn't want to keep talking about this incident, and they took a stance, and you did too. How did you feel it went on the whole?
I mean, it's tough to say in terms of lasting impact. I mean, if we're honest, it may well not do much at all. But I think the good thing about it mainly was that it just got it more out there into the public eye. And we obviously were leading on something which I felt was good. And obviously Birmingham and Rangers decided to follow suit. And I think one or two others, lower down the pyramid did as well. So, I think it wasn't necessarily ever going to be about getting something done at this stage. But I think it was... the main thing was about getting a discussion out there in terms of what can be done. I mean, it is very difficult unless these, various social media sites decide to, grow some morals and actually act and ban people and, pass details on to the authorities, because it is appalling, the abuse that we're seeing. And it does seem a bit like our club, or certainly our players have, been some of the ones that have had the worst of it. Really, we've had 3 players abused, and it's, obviously it's just completely unacceptable, isn't it? It's not the type of world that we want to live in. So, I applaud the club for trying to do something, and I felt that as someone that runs a fanzine, I should, take a stand with them and also do a boycott for a week. So that's what I did, really. It'll be interesting to see how it, in the future, if they can collaborate with each other. I think it's difficult sometimes to get, everyone across the board on the same page, although the issue we're going to talk about later has managed to do that. But, like I say, I think it's a step in the right direction, really. And, we just need to see more getting done, because it just seems like it seems to be happening constantly now. Like there's almost a story like daily or every couple of days, and it's just really disturbing, and it's not on, is it? Let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, Matt, is it disappointing that so few other clubs joined in? I mean, when Birmingham and Rangers started coming on board, thinking, okay, this may be building towards something, but none of the other clubs in the Football League or Premier League actually took that step. And is it a missed opportunity in that sense, a chance to actually send a unified message to Twitter and other social media platforms, but obviously wasn't taken, and we were sadly pretty much a lone voice in the wilderness.
Yeah, I don't know how much notice or how much visibility there was prior to the Swans taking that stance to other clubs. I know particularly Premier League clubs, they have these obligations with their social media content and stuff, and they have stuff planned long in advance and planned adverts and whatnot. And I get that side of things. I think the story, the big story, of course, is that it was done, and maybe in future just to plan in advance. Say, look, this is unacceptable. Therefore, if it happened today, for example, say right then from the 10th of May to the 20th of May, we're not going to be posting anything, and that way then there's enough time for everyone to get their houses in order and join that, and hopefully there would be a widespread, because I didn't know it was coming at all. I don't know about you two, but I had no idea that was that media blackout was gonna happen from the club until it happened. So to see that it happened, if that was the case across the board, then it's even more admirable that Birmingham and Rangers, and as you say, some of the other lower league teams jumped on it, because they would have had no notification either, and decided that was for the greater good, which it absolutely was. But if it hasn't been communicated across, let's have that conversation. Let's get to other clubs and say, look, we'll plan a date, and we'll say, right, we're not talking on social media for this long, and none of our players are either, and it's something that needs to be done, and we've still seen since. I've seen a story today or yesterday. Instagram have banned someone for a set period of time and limited their ability to send. It's bullshit. It's complete. They're taking the piss at this point, because it's been so strongly criticised, their weak stance on racism, that to carry on with this nonsense line about banning people for a set period of time, it needs everyone to come together in the way that they have with the Super League nonsense that we've seen, to really hit Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, hit them where it hurts, which is just completely just blank out that platform. I mean, Twitter in particular, it thrives and survives on the celebrity content. It is there in the difference to Facebook and Instagram as well, in the same sense that because you have that direct access to these people you otherwise wouldn't get to see inside their life and what they decide to show you. But if these people then come off and stay off, then they lose that. And football Twitter in particular is massive. So if these football players decide, right, no more social media, the clubs follow suit, then the social media companies have a real problem. But at the moment, unfortunately, it's all too weak from all parties. There's the social media companies not doing enough, and then there's the football clubs just sending a message out going, oh, our players received abuse. Anyway, next up, we've got Crystal Palace. You know what I mean? Everyone needs to be doing more. Everyone. We can't just put a tweet out and then get on with our lives. It needs to be more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say that racism has been eradicated from the stands by any means. I mean, I think we've all heard kind of racist chanting and racist comments in football stadiums down the years, but it's a very different scenario to what it once was. But on social media, it just seems like it's getting worse all the time. And Steve, I don't know. The problem for me is I don't know if these people, what these people's motivation is. Because are these people, what I'm trying to say is, are these people who can be shamed, or are they people who are looking for a reaction? They're racist, whichever way you look at it, and they're vile people, whichever way you look at it. But if they are prone to shame, then there is a way of tackling this. If they aren't, then there's surely nothing else you can do other than ban them and try and find a way of preventing them from getting back on a different account.
Yeah, it's because obviously we've got nothing in common with these people. It's very difficult to say what the motivation is in the first place. So it's probably a combination. For some of them, probably do want to be known. And then there's others that I think if they were talked down to, then they might realise what they've done, kind of thing. But I mean, it's hard to know what the answer is, really, isn't it? Obviously, need better education for a lot of people. I think that's probably the main answer, but that's obviously it's easier said than done. Who honestly knows? It's difficult, isn't it, to comprehend why people are doing this, but it's certainly a problem that seems to be getting worse, and it's something that needs to change desperately.
What I will say is it's the opportunity at the moment with VPNs and whatnot to do something which you cannot do in any form of society without consequence. I mean, yeah, you'll have your social media account banned, right? It's an opportunity for these teenagers or whoever they are, and I'm not just labeling teenagers, just sometimes that's what you hear, that it is some teenager somewhere that has done it. But it's an opportunity to do without consequence. So that becomes the appeal, because you can get away with it, and you might get a bit of fame out of it as well, because you get your account flashed up on social media by that player who's named and shamed you if they do, and so and as far as that's concerned, then I mentioned in a previous piece about clubs and players and social media companies doing more. You go up the top, you look at UEFA, you look at actual full-on institutions of football who have monkey chants and bananas thrown on a pitch at black players, and they fine them £30,000. It's ridiculous, This is a problem, not just in England, not just in Britain, not just on social media. This is a cancer that has run through football for since long before we were, we were around. This cancer has been there forever, but the lack of management and control and real punishment for these crimes is laughable. And yes, at the moment, all you can do is ban them. But if social media companies get proper documentation and make you validate who you are when you create an account, then you get prosecuted, and then you get tracked down, and you serve a sentence for your racist crimes. So there's steps, but I mean, when you're looking at the very top of that pyramid and how pathetic they are, then there's no wonder why we got this problem that we've got.
No, it's a distressing situation, and sadly, a boycott by one championship club, as admirable as it was, is not going to change things overnight. This is an ingrained problem in social media, online, and in society, which is going to have to take a heck of a lot of work to solve. One problem which seems to have been solved for the time being anyway in remarkably quick time, and seems to have had more attention than any racist abuse we've heard of ever, I would say, is the European Super League. It's what's been on everybody's lips for the last few days. It's fair to say, Steve, that whatever these 12 clubs hoped they would achieve from announcing a breakaway league, it hasn't been achieved, has it?
No, I mean they've got no bottle whatsoever. Similar level to Cardiff City when Dave Jones was there. Even I'm surprised at how quickly they backed out of it. I'm not too shocked that it looks like it's dead in the water for now, especially. But I can't say I'm overly surprised that this was a plan. That I think it's ultimately what a lot of these owners of these clubs have wanted for years. They don't like the uncertainty of sport, where they don't know in terms of money that's coming in, and they think they're entitled to a bigger slice of the pie. And basically, this is what that was all about. And it's just incredibly selfish. Goes against everything that football and sport is about. And I'd like to see big sanctions and punishments for the people concerned, because they're trying to spoil the game. But one thing I would say is, I think there's been a lot of apathy with football fans down the years. But I do think this may have woken a few people up. We've seen a lot of scenes this evening with, fans turning up at Chelsea and kicking off, and that's what's needed. And that may have made the difference. So it's a lesson to us all, really. I mean, if you're not happy with the situation, then always feel like you can protest and cause change, because it does seem like that's happened tonight. So that's got to be a good thing.
I really hope it is the backlash and the PR disaster that's caused this, and not some kind of shady backroom deal where UEFA have caved to some of their demands. Because I think the UEFA has never been, or at least has not been for a very long time, in such a strong bargaining position against these breakaway clubs, because they've tried to break away and they have been left with egg on their face massively. They've been shamed publicly. They've had the bloody Prime Minister turning on them, etc. They've absolutely been embarrassed by all this. And I really hope UEFA then turns around to them and say, see, told you so, you're not as strong as you think you are. Now sit down, shut up, and get on with playing football. I really hope that is the attitude, and that there is no kind of bargaining position that's been met here. There's no kind of meeting in the middle that's happened here, because UEFA and all other football authorities should just turn around to these clubs and treat them with the contempt that they deserve after this shambolic and amateurish attempt to ruin football, really. I mean, Matt, do you think this is basically the European Super League has been a topic of conversation for a while? Is it dead in the water now, or is it just gone away for a little bit and it'll rear its ugly head at some point in the future again?
It's absolutely crazy that I'm trying to work out whether it was 24 or 48 hours ago. I think it was 48 hours ago when the story broke, wasn't it? How crazy this term has come into our vocabulary and is going again 48 hours later, but dominated that entire time. And it just feels crazy now to how much it has dominated every aspect. People who didn't know what football was getting told what exactly was happening. It just became this like global news story everywhere you looked. Because it's such a big revelation, really. So Steve said, this is something that's been mooted about for many years already. We even said, didn't we, when we got taken over by American owners, they had DC United propping up the rest, the MLS, for years while they were funding their new stadium, because there was no jeopardy. There was no risk of relegation. So just leave them rot there. And then once they got everything sorted, then you can start building a team. And obviously, we this is going back a few years in this pod. Now we were saying maybe that's the problem. Maybe they didn't realise the financial risk for us actually dropping out of this league, which of course they've come to feel now the real full pinch of, and the reality of how damaging it can be. So American owners, Asian owners, whatever, who haven't grown up with the game and just see it as a business venture. This is the problem, and this is the problem. It's been a problem for a long time, in that you've got these businessmen that take over, not football men, and they come in then, and it's all about dividend. It's all about the bottom line. It's how can we make money, and then you can exploit markets with better advertising streams and all that, and try and get some increased revenue. And then you're looking for the next big buck, and this is what's happened. And it seems inevitable.
The thing is, though, Matt, you said they're businessmen. They don't behave like businessmen. Businessmen kind of assess risk and spend within their means. And the football clubs, even the biggest football clubs in the world, are running at massive losses, and they're making appalling decisions. Somebody pointed out Florentino Perez, who has become like the face of this monstrosity of an idea, the Real Madrid president, said basically that they had no choice, that the pandemic had forced them into this scenario because their financial situation was so precarious and they needed to minimize risk. Where was this kind of need to minimise risk when they spent £130 million on Eden Hazard? Where was this, minimisation of risk when Barcelona were handing Lionel Messi just the world's biggest contract and paying him money that they simply couldn't afford? Where has Man United's risk aversion been the whole time that they've been the awful decisions that they've been making over the last few years, ever since Fergie left? These are, bottom line, terrible business people who have made awful decisions over a number of years, who've realised that it can't be sustained and are looking for an easy way out. it's the result actually of really poor business practices across the board. You know who's not on board with this? Bayern Munich, Borussia Dortmund, clubs who are actually brilliantly run, clubs which make profits and don't actually spend what they can't afford on players, etc. They live within their means. They're not on board with this. It is the greedy clubs, the ones that cannot actually cope with anybody kind of threatening their position of superiority. The ones who panic whenever they finish outside the top spot. Whenever there is a threat of falling out the Champions League, they panic spend, sack managers left, right, and centre, rack up debts. But through that means this is the result of just terrible business practices. So sorry, I'm not going to listen to Florentino Perez turn around and say this is a necessity and this is something that has to be done. They've got themselves into a hole through their own actions, through their own bad decisions, and they should not actually be allowed to sacrifice the rest of football just to make amends for their poor business practices. That's my rant on this over. But I mean, Steve, where do we go from here? Because I don't think this idea is going away. It will reappear in the end. I think in the end, eventually it'll become. I think it'll have to become a reality because these clubs are going to want it at some point. But I just can't get over the arrogance of these clubs in that believing that they can just cut off the rest of football, secure their own interests in that way, and to hell with the rest of the sport. I can't understand the short-sightedness, the greed. I just can't understand any of it. I think it's just poison. I really do.
Well, it's definitely poison, but I mean, as I said, I think they've wanted this for quite a while. I don't think this is like a knee-jerk thing, and I'm not. I think the pandemic maybe has meant they've decided to bring this forward, but I think this is what they've always wanted. I mean, they don't want competition. As I've said, they want like that sure thing. They don't want your Leicesters of this world winning the league or then get into the Champions League. They don't want West Ham pushing for the top four. They view football as a chance to make money, and they're not on the same page as the rest of us. They're the villains, and we don't want them involved. I mean, I think everybody who is associated with this idea should be banned from football for life. I mean, it's as simple as that. But we have to hope that this marks a turning point for football now, because we've seen these protests, we've seen these clubs backtrack. They have made idiots of themselves, and let's hope it leads to more regulation, and that can hopefully stop any issues. Because I mean, the truth is, these big clubs are never going to be happy. I mean, they'll get more money, and then they'll want a bigger slice of the pie again, and then after that they'll want another bigger slice of the pie. I mean, similar to this European Super League does happen. I mean, in the end you'll get leagues within a league in that, like you have in the Premier League. You'll get the likes of Arsenal and Tottenham struggling, and then you'll probably get Real Madrid and Barcelona at the top of it, and they'll be like, well, we bring more to this European Super League than you do, so we want more money than you. It just eats itself. So, there's no honour there, and I mean, it's quite laughable in some ways that where obviously everyone's on the sides of the likes of UEFA and the Premier League, whereas they're just as bad for various things. I mean, you look at the Premier League and that infamous Game 39 plan. I mean, that was absolutely terrible, for example. And on all type of things like that. I mean, you look at FIFA with who they've awarded World Cups to and all this type of thing. It's football urgently needs an independent regulator across the board. I mean, there's no two ways about it. On my sense, the game is rooted with Muppets who would just only care about themselves. So, but this needs to be a turning point, I would say. I mean, it could help save the game. Hopefully it will.
Yeah, hopefully it's the wake-up call that the game needs, and hopefully it returns a bit of sanity and, returns football to its roots in some ways. But we'll have to wait and see. It certainly had a seismic impact on the sport that we all love. Moving back to the Swans, let's just finish off by looking ahead to our next game and indeed the kind of remainder of the season, because, Matt, we're in a position now where we can't finish in the top two. but it looks incredibly unlikely that we'll finish outside of the playoffs unless there is a monumental collapse and a bizarre series of results between now and the end of the season. So I guess what's the objective for the remaining games, and what should be the attitude going into Saturday's or Sunday's match? I think it is against Reading.
There's two trails of thought here, which I'm toying between. The first is of course the team that goes into the playoffs with form is invariably the one that ends up in the final at least, and quite often goes up. That's not necessarily the person that finishes sixth on the final day and sneaks in like we did last season, but it can be the team that's just won the few games leading up to it. Or it can be a barnstorming run in the last 4 or 5 weeks. So form is key. So in that respect, you want to work as quickly and as hard as possible on the training pitch to make sure that we don't look at these games as irrespective and pointless, because they aren't pointless. If it means that you build the confidence and we suddenly find that sort of verve that we had in the second half against Millwall back, and we can approach it with a bit of confidence, then it's anyone's. That said, we were talking on last podcast, and after we finished recording, I made a joke to you both about saying what we perhaps should have done, because we were talking about how dead we were on our feet in those games, that what we perhaps should have done is identified a game whereby we were probably going to come unstuck anyway. I used the example of Bournemouth away, and I said, well, maybe we should have rested a few of the players that will be playing 3 games a week, every week for the past 6 weeks. Maybe we should have just gone, right, hey, you're missing this one. Lowe, you're missing this one. Matt Grimes, you're missing this one. Mark Gehee, you're missing this one. Even to Freddie Woodman, because they've all suffered. All of their form has suffered because of fatigue. I know Cooper doesn't believe in fatigue, but in terms of the confidence has gone with the fatigue and with the lack of ideas and mental fatigue as well as physical fatigue for just relentless football. And I joked to you about, let's just give these players a rest, choose a game where we just go and accept defeat, but you give your players an extra 3 days rest then. So my other school of thought is, of course, is that where we're going to finish in the playoffs. So maybe you start chopping and changing big numbers now. You start giving the players half the team the week off and another half the team the week off the next game, in order to make sure that you approach the playoffs fresh as you can. Because Swansea this season have proven that when we're fresh and we're energetic on the pitch, then we can look half decent. But when we're not, like we've been in the last couple of games, it really is poor, and you can't see how we can possibly win the playoffs. So there's my conundrum. It's whether we go into it in form or whether we go into it fresh, and it doesn't look like the two can coexist.
And Steve, Reading this weekend, they'll need a win to have any kind of hope of making the playoffs. You'd assume. They've had a good season, but they've just, a bit like us, really tailed off over the last few weeks. I think the clubs with the smaller squads, really, we've seen have fallen away over the last few weeks. Us, Brentford, Reading, and the former Premier League clubs have really pushed on. Your Norwich, Watford, Bournemouth. They've been able to find that second gear at this stage of the season. I think it's shown through, really. I mean, going into the Reading game, what are the kind of changes that you would like to see? Is there anything that you'd like to see us try, or at this stage of the season, is it too late to try something new and we just have to try and make the best of what we've got and try and make that work?
I think, like I said, I'd like to see Callum in the side. That's what I would say. I think Connor Roberts should move back from the wing to full back. Possibly Whittaker come in the team. Like I said, I don't like the caution of those 3 midfield players, so I think Hooverhan should come in as well, really. So that's what I'd be thinking.
Matt, what about you? Yeah, I'm like I say, my conundrum is whether or not we give these players a rest, and you start saying, you give Roberts we give Roberts a week off the other day, and and you see the benefit when the players aren't constantly in the firing line and just giving themselves some time off. And so, I mean, I'm edging towards making changes for rest's sake, because we flogged this dead horse for the second half of the season. Yeah, we've just constantly been playing the same players, and we'll force ourselves back into form. If we just keep playing every week and every game and every 3 days, we'll force ourselves back into form, and it just won't work that way. So I would be looking, players like Whittaker. I mean, it's a no-brainer because he's going to be fresh as anything. Plus, he is a genuine option. We've seen that. Giving Leon Cullen more game time. Another player who's ankle pending and fitness size that ways, is going to have all the energy, boundless energy in the world. So he should be getting more game time now. Lowe shouldn't be, for me, he shouldn't be seen on the pitch in a couple of weeks. I know that's bizarre to say, having seen him come off, in what looks like he's, hit a bit of a purple patch again, albeit didn't score tonight. But you see those things and you just think, right, well, we need to give ourselves the best opportunity now, if we are to finish in the playoffs, to go in there. Because as I said to you before we started recording tonight, Guto, when you look at the 46 games, it's a very good debate as to whether or not, and I know we always say you end up where you deserve to be in the league. Do you think that we deserve to go up? I'd have grave reservations about making that statement. I really do think that we've shown ourselves up on countless times this season as being a team that just do not look like promotion contenders. And tonight, again, you expect the team pushing for promotion to be pinning teams back, to be creating, to be asking questions. And it just didn't happen at all. And we've seen that time and time again, where you're just thinking, which one of these is going for the top two? Because they can't really work it out. So on that respect, you couldn't say, right, okay, we probably won't get to the Premier League on sporting merit, if you like, in terms of the way we've played a lot of the time. But you only need to play well or win 3 games. Once you get to the playoffs, that's all you need to do. You just need to win 3 games anyway. We saw Portugal win a bloody whole tournament without scoring a goal in open play until the semi-finals a few years ago. So, yeah, you got to look at that and think, right, how can we give ourselves the best possible chance of getting 3 positive results back to back? And it's as simple as that. And that is the most complicated thing, which I've tried to make sound simple, which it really isn't, of course.
Brilliant. And well, let's finish off then with a score prediction. Steve, Reading, one of the teams who've been around us all season but have fallen away of late. Neither of us are in spectacular form. How do you think this game is going to go?
I'm going to say a boring 0-0.
Matt, what about you?
Yeah, I was thinking exactly the same thing, actually. 0-0.
I'm not sure if it's going to be boring, but do you know what? I think it could be 0-0 as well. I think Reading may just lack the quality these days to find the goals. They huff and puff, but don't really blow the house down. And I think we'll be pretty satisfied with a 0-0 now that we can't go up automatically. So wow, full house of 0-0s, very high expectations for the Sunday 12:30 kickoff on Sky. That's wow, very exciting. Well, hopefully it is a bit more exciting than what we've predicted. But do you know what? After the last minute dramas of recent weeks, maybe we could do with that kind of match. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been a bit of a long one, plenty to discuss, both Swans related and non-Swans related. But hopefully you found some sources of enjoyment in there, and hopefully you will join us again next time. Until then, thank you very much for joining us.